Yeah, so the headlines were quick to scream, vegans have younger genes, but things are more complex than that. Here's why those headlines missed the mark.
Dr. Lucia, you've been at Stanford for almost 10 years studying the world of epigenetics and how food impacts epigenetics, how food just impacts us as a whole. I mean, really fascinating stuff. It's interesting, there was this movie that came out a little over a year ago called You Are What You Eat, and it took a look at these twins, and you're familiar with it, and I'm sure people are. And my channel blew up during that time because I talk a lot about eating animal protein and eating good quality meat and whole foods. And a lot of people jumped ship to a more plant-based lifestyle during that time. And some of the data in that documentary is just inaccurate and it needs some good solid explaining. So you're the person to really dive into that.
I've been drinking LMNT for 7 years, not just as a traditional electrolyte, but as something that curbs my appetite through the course of the day. So that link down below gets you a free sample variety pack. When you get any purchase with LMNT, you get that free variety pack. So you can try all the different flavors. They've got a sparkling as well, which is something that's really been a game changer for me because it feels like I'm drinking a soda, but without the sugar, without the carbs, without the nonsense, without the hidden nasty stuff, just straight up electrolytes in a sparkling can. But I still love their stick packs. Their stick packs are what get me through a lot of my workouts. It makes life easier for me. I'm not thinking about food all the time because I have something that I can sip on that curbs my appetite and is also mineralizing my body. So that link down below, drinklmnt.com/Thomas, is for that free sample variety pack with any purchase.
Okay, let me break down the study for you. So in that study, so that was featured in a Netflix documentary, You Are What You Eat, a twin experiment. So what we did, we took 22 pairs of overweight twins following a standard American diet and split them into two groups. One followed a whole food vegan diet and the other a whole food omnivorous diet. Now, what we found was interesting. So both groups experienced improvements. They lost weight, improved their blood sugar and lipids. But the vegan group ate naturally, ate fewer calories, about 200 fewer calories a day, less sugar, more fiber, and experienced greater improvements, both in terms of weight loss and so-called epigenetic rejuvenation. So let me explain this concept for your listeners. So as we age, also our genes age with us. So think of your DNA as the hardware and epigenetics is like the software that tells your cells which genes to turn off or on. Now, as we get older, this software loses information. This is known as the information theory of aging. So just like software can get buggy over time, our cells get confused about which genes should be on or off and how much. And so, for example, our cells turn up inflammatory genes, the NF-kappa B targets, and turn down some genes that maintain healthy mitochondria, the powerhouses of our cells, like the PGC1 alpha network. And some cells even become zombie cells, activating so-called SASP genes. Now, over the past 10 years, scientists have developed so-called epigenetic clocks that can measure the software changes as we get old. And in our study, in the Netflix study, we used some of these clocks to estimate the participants' biological age. So the chronological age is the number of candles on your birthday cake, the numbers of years you have been alive. our biological age is the physiological age of our cells and tissues, and is affected by these epigenetic software changes. So scientists are using these clocks to estimate our biological age. Now, going back to our study, we found that the vegan group showed a slower pace of epigenetic aging compared to the omnivorous group. Yeah, so the headlines were quick to scream, vegans have younger genes, but things are more complex than that. Here's why those headlines missed the mark. These epigenetic clocks are AI tools. Think of them like ChatGPTs for aging cells that are trained with thousands of people's epigenetic data to identify those epigenetic patterns that match with signs of faster aging. Things like weight gain, high blood sugar, higher inflammation. So when you lose weight, all these markers improve, signaling to the AI that you are getting epigenetically younger. For this reason, we don't know whether the slower pace of aging among vegans was actually due to the vegan diet itself, or the greater weight loss among vegans, or other factors. In addition, this was a short-term study, like only for 2 months, so we don't know whether the benefits persist over this timeline, beyond this timeline. And in addition, our epigenome, our epigenetic reactions actually need both plant and animal foods to run smoothly. If without proper planning, vegan diets can lack important epinutrients, so nutrients that are essential for our epigenetic reactions, like B12 and choline. Now, most vegan people that are healthy, they know this, so they supplement with B12. It is not an issue. But in this particular study, we didn't supplement for B12 because it was a short-term study. But I think it's something important to emphasize. And lastly, I think if you don't need to lose weight, these results don't mean much to you, because losing weight on any diet will likely make you look younger on paper based on these epigenetic clocks. But it may shorten your life if you are, for example, a frail elderly person like my mom. I always talk about my mom. She's 84, right? If she goes on a diet, on a weight loss diet, she doesn't need to lose weight, but she does have high glucose sometimes. So I think fasting for her could improve a lot of markers and make her epigenetic age look younger. But it wouldn't necessarily be a longevity intervention that I want to recommend.
So when you're looking at these markers of epigenetic age or biological age, I mean, it's easy to get lost in the weeds of that because there's a lot of moving pieces, right? Now, there's these tests that are out there. People are starting to measure these things. You've got Brian Johnson, who most people know by now, who's a perfectly nice guy. I've interviewed him, but he's very into the biological age piece, and he's got a lot of people. In fact, speaking of Netflix, there was just a piece, a whole thing with him on, right? So
Don't Die.
Yeah,
the Don't Die documentary. Yeah,
and it's I can personally say, I can't speak for you, but I mean I think it's a little bit of a reach to like hang your hat on a lot of biological age stuff. Just there's so many moving pieces, but. Let's take a couple minutes to kind of break down why biological age might not be something that people want to get overly concerned with in the first place.
Yeah, you are touching an important point. So there is a problem with this concept of biological age. Biological age, it's a bit like never land. Everyone talks about it, but nobody can actually measure it. And this is why aging is not uniform across your body. For example, think about it. A runner may have a young heart, but an old skin because of sun exposure. It's like different parts of your body are living in different time zones, right? And for this reason, there's no single test that can capture your true biological age across all your cells and tissues, right? Beyond this complexity of biological age, epigenetic clocks face another challenge: precision. So if you take the same sample and run two epigenetic tests, you could get results that differ by 1 to 3 years. That's quite a margin of error if you're trying to estimate whether an intervention, let's say taking a supplement or a diet, is working for you, right? So these clocks make sense when we consider very big populations. We are talking about thousands and millions of people. In this case, we do see small but significant associations between being epigenetically younger and engaging in behaviors that promote our health, like eating a diet rich in polyphenols and vegetables, or avoiding the exposure to environmental toxicants like cigarette smoking. But at the individual level, these clocks don't have really limited clinical utility at the moment. They are great research tools, and I'm actually personally excited to use them in my research, but I wouldn't use them to direct my lifestyle choices or those of the people I care about, like my mom.
It's, when you look at how we measure age, I mean, it's sometimes people need to be able to hear that it's not all uniform one thing, right? I mean, it's because we're almost having the same discussion here with, okay, chronological age. People have the complaint that it's too uniform. It's too, this is your one age. In a lot of ways, it's okay. Yeah, that's just a measure of your time on this earth 3 times since you were born. But when you look at biological age, it at first gives people hope because they say, okay, well, that allows me to have something to work towards, and that I get. If it's something that's enticing for you because it allows you to start making healthy lifestyle changes within measure. But I can candidly say that I have met at least half a dozen people that have become disheartened and discouraged by their biological age results because it's not what they wanted. And these are perfectly healthy people that live tremendous lifestyles. And I like your example of the runner or the triathlete that might spend a lot of time outdoors. Their skin is leathery there, but you look at their metabolomics and you look at it, and they're screaming of good health, right? Some of them push it a little too hard and probably damage themselves. But I mean, the point is that you can't say, okay, this person's been exposed to a lot of UV and they have worn out skin that's old, and say that that's reflecting everything. You could make a general statement about that. But wouldn't that just be the same as a general statement about someone's chronological age? It's like the same, you're getting into the same category there.
Yeah, I like your perspective that, as long as it motivates you to change, that's fine with me, right? If you want to include an epigenetic test or other tests, if it's something that motivates you, but it can be a double-edged sword, right? It can also it can induce a placebo effect, empower you, or a nocebo effect, and harm you. It is the same with many other things. There was a fascinating study at Stanford where the researchers basically gave people fake genetic scores, predicting that they were going to perform very badly on a treadmill. and actually, it was not true, right? They didn't have those predispositions. But when they actually then measured their performance on the treadmill after having received this fake genetic predisposition, they performed poorly. And the effects of the perceived, the effect of this perception, of this perceived genetic predisposition were actually real. So, I think as with many things, even a genetic test can actually empower you. I recommend genetic tests in many cases for people, but can also have the opposite effect. So I think, first of all, understand the person that is in front of you. Epigenetic clocks are, for now, I think, more a research tool. And you can do research on yourself and be interested in looking at changes with different protocols, but I wouldn't use it to really guide your dietary changes or exercise changes. Also because, as we mentioned, these have been trained on large populations, right, and track with things like losing weight or reducing your blood sugar, and this is good for the overall population, but may not be necessarily good at the individual level. And that's why the utility for personal decisions is currently limited.
Well, and if we're really, really real with like the Brian Johnson situation, and again, like Brian's a great dude. He's super nice. I really do like Brian. I really do. And this isn't even any malice on him. Brian has the resources to be able to test this stuff frequently and then be able to try something and change something and test again. And it's, essentially these infinite resources to be able to do that, which matters too, because if you have flash in the pan tests of your biological age and that's what you have to work with, and then you say, okay, well, I've been cold plunging and sauning and doing this, and so this worked, so then I need to continue to do this. It's really hard to find like where the balance is of where that's going to help you and where that's going to hurt you. There's so many moving pieces that I emphasize, and I understand that a lot of what Brian Johnson evokes in people is positive. Like it invokes this, like, make a change, do things, you can do it.
Yeah.
All positive. So there's no malice towards Brian, but I want people to understand just what you're saying is that it's just not, you get this test done. This does not give you an accurate representation of when you're going to die, or when you're, how healthy you are, or how much vitality you have. It's nowhere even close to telling you that.
Yeah, exactly. And, I also share your feelings about Brian Johnson. I really admire how he's investing money and time to track all these measures and to potentially one day really be able to extract those biomarkers that work and share them with people, right? So, but at the same time, if you are, a normal, an average person, I think you should probably focus more on the bigger picture rather than getting caught in this reductionistic approach, looking at single markers that can be biological age, or I think this is the danger of delivering the message that health is more complicated than it needs to be, right? Yeah. I know that this is not the goal of Brian, and I understand that he's actually almost using his resources to potentially simplify this process for people. But I think that the message can get lost.
Yeah. It's and it's in an effort to simplify. Sometimes things get very, very, very complicated.
Yes.
If we talked about this in another episode, but just for the sake of people that it's YouTube is funny with how people come to videos and stuff. There's a very good chance that people are watching this and haven't seen any of our other episodes. What are a few things, takeaways that people can do that can influence their epigenetics and potentially influence their biological age, even though we're not talking about testing it? You mentioned some other things, some other videos, like some culinary things that people can do.
Yeah, so there are lots of different things. I actually have a framework that I call Epi Wellness, that I have developed and teach at Stanford University. And is based on 7 pillars that work together to support your epigenetic health. So the main pillar is epinutrition. So eating foods that nourish your genes. And it's a mix of plant and animal foods, each providing unique benefits. Then we have exercise, sleep, social connections, really nurturing those connections that energize you. Cognitive engagement, keeping your mind curious and active. Stress management, finding and creating moments of calm in your day. And the 7th pillar is avoiding environmental toxicants that can harm your epigenetic processes. And these include things like pesticides and microplastics, which have been actually shown in animal experiments to induce permanent epigenetic changes that are passed to next generation for up to 4 generations and are linked to hormone imbalances and infertility. Now, we are not aiming for perfection across all these areas at once. These pillars work in synergy. So small improvements in each area add up to powerful changes in your epigenetic health. It's like compound interest for your well-being. And then we have talked about in other episode specifically about epinutrition and some foods. Yeah, we are just, I think what I want to highlight from that episode is that really epinutrition is a beautiful friendship between animal and plant foods, each providing unique benefit for your epigenetic health. And I love teaching about epinutrition because it's like an olive branch among the often polarized nutrition space we are living in. And I think instead of really getting caught in dietary debates, we should focus on how different foods, animal and plant foods, can work together to support our genes.
I do have one question that I think that I would be interested to hear your take on, and it's neither good, bad, nor ugly. I mean, I'm careful not to demonize seed oils. I don't go down that route. I know, like, I try not to demonize anything, really. I try to look at it from various perspectives. But you got me thinking when you were talking about environmental toxicants and things like that, and things that the thing I have concerns with seed oils is less about the polyunsaturated fats itself and more about the deodorizers and the hexane and the things to create the oil and make it more shelf stable. Is there anything, in your opinion, that we should be maybe cautious of or at least aware of when it comes to these and how it affects our epigenetics?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any research on the epigenetic effects of seed oils. I am with you. I don't want to demonize an entire class of foods, and research really doesn't show that people who are eating this seed oil have worse health outcomes. Okay, in studies, on population studies. On the other hand, however, if you look at the food composition and how they are prepared, I don't use them in my diet. I don't recommend using seed oils to the people I love, just because as they are highly refined, right? And there is a balance between omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids that we need to maintain. And because seed oil are so cheap and are ubiquitous in the food we eat, we are eating far more omega-6 fatty acids from this seed oil than probably our body needs. So again, I don't think it's the enemy number one. I'm not aware of epigenetic research on seed oil, but I would probably avoid them if possible, just because there is also an opportunity cost, right? If you're eating seed oil, you're maybe missing out on something that is more nutritious and good for you, right? So why not doing that?
Yes, I mean, I think we can agree on that. At the very least, it's rather devoid of value, right? Whether it's
and
bad,
potentially yes, and for sure it doesn't excite me the production, the way they are produced, and there are there are so many other things where we don't have evidence that are bad for us. I was talking about microplastics, right, and even pesticides like glyphosate, right? If we look at these compounds through the lens of traditional toxicology, they're not toxic, because traditional toxicology focuses on acute toxicity. But when we look at them through the lens of epigenetics, we discover something powerful and sad called generational toxicity, whereby you may not have and see any effect on the first generation, but you see the effects on the second, third, and fourth generation. Professor Michael Skinner is a leader in this field. I think you should have him on your podcast. He's a frequent guest speaker in my lectures, in my classes at Stanford. And he talks a lot about these effects and the importance of rethinking the way we define whether something is toxic or not. And so, this is not the same as a seed oil, but it's similar, right? It just depends through which lens are we looking through.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's, I think that's the short-term kind of negative effect that we have right now. So we look at everything. How does it affect us? And even the nutrient value of a calorie, and what we look at, like how much does, overeating is not problematic. Okay, well, it is not in the short term, but it isn't. Like everything can be looked at its scale. And the hard part is that no one has a crystal ball. And it just comes down to a little bit of risk management. And it's like, if we wanted to get into the weeds of it, it's like the difference between how the EU classifies as something versus, right? It's like, okay, let's wait for something to happen. When something bad happens, then we will pull it off the shelves. Versus, there's some risk here. Maybe we won't allow this now. And it's being able to say, like, no one has a crystal ball. Like, no one can tell the future. But we can look at things and we can say, there's enough causative potential evidence here to say, like, even in rodents, to say, maybe we should at least take pause, to the point where we're not just willy-nilly taking this stuff in.
The precautionary principle is what we need to apply when we are unsure, and what I personally apply in my own life.
Yeah. I agree. Well, Dr. Lucia, where can everyone find you?
Yeah, if you would like to actually discover the kitchen tricks we are talking about, I have 5 kitchen hacks to unlock the epigenetic superpowers of your food. You can grab my free guide at drlucia.com, or connect with me on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram at Dr. Lucia Aronica. I share weekly insights on epigenetics and healthy aging.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.